This is way worse than Suns fans expected, as the Suns unfortunately have a disappointing third quarter collapse and fall to a Pelicans team who is at the bottom of the Western Conference. And it is not looking great, as without Kevin Durant, this team just falls flat as they are 1-7 in games when he is not playing, and he needs to be recognized for that. So we're going to be diving in, looking at this lackluster play from the Suns without Kevin Durant and some possible changes or tweaks that could bring out those benefits. We're going to be looking at all of this and more in this episode of Suns Digest. I'm Bruce Velez, and you guys have been absolutely fantastic showing your love and support for the channel. We really do appreciate it. So if you do enjoy that content, keep hitting that like and subscribe button to help us get to our goal of 2,000 subscribers. But without further ado, make sure to grab a snack. But let's dive into this depressing video, as we're going to be exploring and discussing how this is absolutely terrible and some bad scenarios happening in Phoenix right now. As we saw with this Suns team coming off into the start of the season, a fiery hot start, one of the top teams in the West. But then the injury bug that was lurking in Phoenix last season continued to bite into this year, where we saw Durant go down with a calf injury where he was reevaluated in 2 weeks, and Bradley Beal was sidelined as well with some calf issues. And the Suns have also had some other injuries around the edges, not just to their big three. Players like Grayson Allen have been dealing with some Achilles injuries. Yusuf Nurkic has dealt with a multitude of injuries with a finger, with a hamstring, and with some ankle issues. Ryan Dunn has dealt with some stuff as well. And add anyone else you want to add on to the list. Colin Gillespie as well, one of the two-way players. But there are many players on this team that have dealt with injuries, which is a little bit of an excuse, but not one to suffice the fact, as the Suns look god awful and look like one of the worst teams in basketball when their best player is not on the court. And you could say, Bruce, well, that's the case. Kevin Durant is one of those guys that should be in MVP conversations. He's a guy that, is one of those top tier elite players. Of course, without their best player, they're going to fall flat, but that's not the case. This Suns team still has top tier players, and Devin Booker, who I'm a huge fan of, but has had some defensive inefficiencies and weak shooting slumps so far, where some Suns fans have turned on him, not myself, but some fans in the community have. Bradley Beal has looked solid as that third star, but minus that third star when Durant is out, if Booker is not delivering as that number one guy, if Beal's not delivering as that second guy, there's no one really off this bench to really take off and leap. We saw Grayson Allen go out and do that in last night's efforts, where he got a double-double. But besides that, we've seen the likes of Josh Okogie, Ryan Dunn peaking at some points, but not necessarily anyone really jumping out and solidifying themselves as a clear piece to really be that guy. And that's something that this Suns team desperately needs with Durant being out. And like I mentioned, we want to look at this from yesterday. We can look at the box score from this Pelicans game. Like I mentioned, Devin Booker had a really hot first quarter, was drilling buckets left and right, but then finished shooting 30% from the field. He did have 30 points for this Suns team, so he did deliver. But the defensive issues with this Suns team are still gleaming from last year. And you could say, obviously, Frank Vogel, Mike Budenholzer, the coach is at the fault of that, but I truly think it is just how the roster is constructed. They don't have enough defensive pieces off this bench to really hold over for some of these players. And maybe Kevin Durant takes so much of that defensive prowess when he is out there helping out and taking so much of that scoring ability away from some of these other guys, to where it doesn't show these glaring issues, because some of these guys step up and deliver in some smaller roles. But unfortunately for the Suns team, this cannot be happening. Like I mentioned, they did have some inactive players as well. We mentioned Durant dealing with that ankle injury, but Ryan Dunn, who was probable going into the contest, he did not play. Yusuf Nurkic, who was obviously sidelined for that hamstring injury, he's out for a week. He did not play. And obviously the two guys in Jalen Bridges and Colin Gillespie, those two-ways were not suiting up. But the Hawks, or not the Hawks, the Pelicans still have some injuries that they've been dealing with. Zion's been out for a while. Jordan Hawkins has been out. They just brought back Brandon Ingram. They had just brought back some other players as well. So for the Suns to lose a game to one of these teams is absolutely awful. And some Suns fans have voiced their opinions out, and some reporters as well. I got this one from Darth Voita, John Voita, one of the premier guys working with who helped get the Suns Planet podcast up and running. I want to say shout out to him, because he's a great guy. He's over on the Suns Jam podcast, but he obviously was outraged from last night's performance. The Suns giving up 45 points in a quarter to the worst team in the Western Conference that was on a 9-game losing streak. That is unacceptable. Cannot be happening with a team. Regardless if your best player is out, this cannot be happening. And like I mentioned, the Suns are now 1-7 when Kevin Durant is out, and when he is playing, they are 11-2. The Suns currently sitting right now at a 12-9 record, and not a pretty one if you are a Suns fan, going over the fact that we could be a top tier. And if we want to look at some of these contracts, looking at some of these possibilities, like I mentioned, the Suns are a second apron team. They have 3 players making $50 million, and then next highest player is Yusuf Nurkic, making around $18 million. So the Suns do have some questions to be asking themselves. Do James Jones, do Matt Ishbia go out and make some changes, or do they tough it out and find some finding out who's going to step up with getting some guys deeper into this rotation? We did see a player who hasn't really been getting much love for this Suns team this season in Bull getting some playing time yesterday, in which he got to explore his possibilities and showcase his skills with this Suns team. And maybe it's more of digging deeper into the roster, finding out players like Bull who've been, shafted in this rotation for a majority of the season due to the fact that the team is so deep and so talented in some of their aspects when the big three is healthy. But maybe experimenting with Bull could be finding some of those issues. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. And now I'm going to go in to kind of going in what is needed and kind of what needs to happen with this Suns team. And as you guys could probably guess, like some of the people all around this fan base has been suggesting, is there needs to be some trades. There needs to be some sort of major shakeup here for the Suns, because not only, even like I said, even with Kevin Durant, even if he is your best player and having him, you still look solid as a team with him healthy. We know, and we've seen this Suns team last year and this year. We know that they are not going to be healthy. And if we already see these rough patches with Durant staying healthy, already having to be sidelined twice through this season with a calf injury and with an ankle injury, it could continue on to the entirety of this season. And who knows if a player like Beal or Booker runs into an injury as well, and that hinders things even more. So I personally think that the Suns need to go and try to find some things around the edges. And we're going to come out with some more videos in the next couple of days kind of detailing that. We've already had some kind of talking about possibly Josh Okogie. We made a video talking about possibly Grayson Allen, who I know Suns fans are reluctant to trade, and personally I think is now going to be staying in Phoenix after his big performance in yesterday's game. But ultimately, there are some players that I think could be on the trade block that the Suns team could explore trading. A player in Yusuf Nurkic at the center position. The Suns need defense. They need another interior presence. Ozo Iguodala, Mason Plumlee, they are solid centers, but they are not going to be that X factor at that center position that the Suns need for the playoffs, going up against teams like the Timberwolves with Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle if they don't move Julius Randle, going up against teams like the Nuggets with Nikola Jokic, going up, and Aaron Gordon, going up against teams like the Thunder with Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. They're going to, and that is just three names off the top of my head. The Lakers with Anthony Davis, who we've seen feasting down low. They are going to need some sort of big man help. They're going to have to do something. If it costs trading that 2031 pick, if it costs getting off some capital to free up Nurkic's contract, I see the Suns going out and doing something, because with Nurkic on the court with this team, with Nurkic off on the court on this team, it just hasn't been working regardless, and they do need an upgrade at that center position. They also need some help on that defensive side, and you could say that was because Ryan Dunn wasn't playing in that game, but ultimately Ryan Dunn's a rookie, and he's shown some flashes, he's shown some glimpses of what he can bring to this Suns team. But why can't we get some better veterans? You want to compete, Matt Ishbia, you want to bring a championship to Phoenix, we're going to need some veteran players that are going to be ready to kind of take and step up and take that role. And there are some players on this roster who, like I said, have been kind of shafted, haven't been gifted that opportunity. One of those being Bull, a young, maybe not young anymore, but still has promising talent. And even though he's been moved around by multiple teams in the league, I know myself and many others feel that Bull could find himself a potential piece if he was brought into the right opportunity. Traded to a team at the trade deadline that is expected to go for 15, 20 wins and just wants to tank. Why can't Bull find himself a team like that is going to give him that opportunity coming off the bench to really find out what he can be in this league? And if it doesn't ultimately work out, guess what? They're off his 1-year contract. I could see the Suns going and making a move around the edges where they go and get a role player around $2 million to trade away, get it by getting rid of Bull. What about a player in Damian Lee? I know he's been rehabbing some injuries with this Suns team. He's finally happy to be back, but it is clearly shown that with this roster that he is just not going to be able to fit in and not get any opportunities with this Suns squad, because they are so deep at that guard position and in that wing position, and he hasn't been able to. He was a DMP in yesterday's performance alongside Ty Washington, one of the only two players. And I think maybe not a lot of teams are interested in Damian Lee. Maybe not a lot of teams are willing to take him on, but maybe a team would be willing to kind of give up a piece if the Suns do attach some draft capital to it to maybe not even make a huge upgrade from Damian Lee, but just having another player who could be ready to go sporadically for 5 to 8 minutes if the Suns ultimately do need it. Now, the Suns could ultimately, like I said, go deeper in this rotation, find some things out, and Bol Bol could promisingly blossom. Maybe some of these young players really find their roles and can succeed with the Suns squad. But ultimately, without Kevin Durant, this team is an absolute disaster class, and it is not looking good or bright for Suns fans. So maybe some shakeups, maybe some things around the edges so when Durant does come back, this team can once then be a well-oiled machine, but then once he is out, can still have some of those players that can still step up and still deliver to take over and still win games with this Suns squad, even though they're missing their best player. We know teams that miss their best player obviously go on some losing streaks, but no team, specifically with 3 players making $50 million, should be 1-7 missing their best player. Teams at that caliber do not do that. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section, how you guys feel about this Suns team, and ultimately what you guys think the Suns need to get better to overcome these games without Durant. Like I said, you guys are absolutely fantastic, showing your love and support in these videos, so it's really, really appreciated. Drop down your thoughts in the comment section, and we'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a